Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. It's Jason, I'm Chucky, for our Halloween special. We didn't wear masks this year. I guess we got faces for radio anyway, so we're ready to roll. I know last year we had the Jason and Chucky masks up, but it's a scary slate this week in games both pro and college. You've got a fight going on. But before we kind of dive into all that, Jay, it's the Fall Classic. It's World Series time. Phillies, who nobody thought would be there, and the Astros, who kind of walked through the NLCS, walked through the divisional round, didn't lose, and they look like the team to beat right now.
No, and an exciting matchup, especially Phillies kind of with a surprise. The hot take information coming in right now. Oh, just as I suspected. Justin Verlander, starting pitcher in Game 1 for the Astros, probably going to make 2 starts,
right,
obviously, in the series. One of the favorites at the top of maybe the MVP chase behind Alvarez and Harper. But Justin Verlander, 7 career starts in the World Series, 4 with Houston, 3 with the Tigers. He's 0-6 with a 5.6 ERA, 35 hits, 24 earned runs, 1.2 whip. So for a guy that's won Cy Young's, probably in shape to win another Cy Young this year. He's been absolutely fantastic, but the World Series has kind of been his kryptonite. So this will be a big kind of hurdle to leap for Justin Verlander, looking to get his first World Series win in this Game 1.
Well, I think as hot as the Phillies have been, if they could somehow jump out and steal Game 1, it kind of sets up a different series right now, because we know the Phillies can hit. Coming into the postseason, there was no question mark of how good they could hit, but fielding and pitching were major question marks. They've kind of got over that hurdle a little bit. They've had timely hitting, and the Phillies really have kind of a Vegas flair with Bryce Harper and Bryson Stott, both kids from Vegas, which kind of makes it fun a little bit, I think, for Vegas bettors out here to look at the Phillies.
Yeah, and they were obviously carried. Harper's been absolutely fantastic.
Great.
His NLCS with the 5 home runs. Rhys Hoskins also been hitting the ball, and he slumped a little bit.
How about the bombs by Schwarber?
Yeah,
Schwarber. I mean, 500
They're
feet
going to have to find Bryson Stott's going to have to get some key hits. Alec Baum is going to have to heat up somewhat a little bit. Hopefully they can get JT Realmuto starting in these games. And there was a surprise switch. We were expecting Wheeler to go in Game 1, and now they're going with Nola in Game 1, and then they'll go to Wheeler. And these teams really haven't matched up. They played a 3-game series at the very end. The very end of the season. We saw Suarez get lit up by the Astros again. The game's meant absolutely nothing to the Astros, and the Phillies actually clinched after the first game of that series into the playoffs. So those games, and these teams haven't played since 2017. So we're really seeing a matchup that we don't get to see very often. And the Astros hitters aren't going to know these pitchers, and these pitchers aren't going to know the Astros. So might be something to look at these on the plays on the unders. With the fact that these hitters aren't going to know these pitchers and haven't seen these pitchers before. The one thing that is a little bit scary for me from the Phillies standpoint, obviously we talk about the Astros being almost a $2 favorite in the series at the way they're playing. The one thing that has been a struggle for the Phillies is closing games out. And Robertson really didn't appear too much in the NLCS. It was Sir Anthony Dominguez. They even used Eflin and at the back end of things. So to be able to close out and win 4 games against this Astros team, they are going to have to find somebody to close those games out.
I know what you said about, a lot of these guys haven't seen each other's pitching staffs, but I think if you like Philly at all in this World Series, you have to think that there'll be some higher scoring games, that they're just going to have to outscore them with that offense. And that's what they did a lot down the stretch. After they made that managerial change from Joe Girardi to Rob Thompson, they really kind of came together and were scoring runs in bunches. I mean, they can flat out hit. Love the way that they play. They've kind of got that moxie. You saw the crowds in Philadelphia that were crazy. They're piggybacking off the only undefeated team in the NFL, the Eagles at 6-0. So they might have thrown snowballs at Santa Claus, but those fans in Phillies right now are pretty excited.
And there's a lot of props up on the game, and we're going to continue to see that menu explode. I think we talk about it just about every week, how many props we're offering on the individual games. But the Pro Baseball Championship, nothing to not look at. If you can think of the prop, the guys have it up. A lot of home run props, exact number of series.
MVP, too.
MVP is up. Win the first game, lose the series, win the first game, win the series. So a lot of stuff to look at on the baseball app.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Before we kind of jump into the football slate, though, there's also a fight this weekend. Anderson Silva, Jake Paul. We've seen the number kind of flip-flop twice, which is uncharacteristic for a fight. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, when this fight was announced, it was an interesting matchup. Obviously, Anderson Silva coming out of the MMA, which is a lot of the fights that Jake Paul has taking the MMA guys and switching it to a boxing match. And Jake Paul originally opened up a favorite, kind of a middle-range favorite. It flipped to Anderson Silva going the favorite about 3 to 4 days into the matchup of the fight, and now it's flipped back to Jake Paul being almost a 2-1 favorite in this matchup. It's an 8-round fight.
Which you normally don't see.
Going back and forth. But again, these are unique situations, different kind of social media fighter, we'll call him, against the MMA slash boxer. We saw Anderson Silva had a ton of success in the MMA ring, especially using his legs and stuff like that. So we'll have to see what kind of striking he has and how quick he has. And again, he's gotten a little bit longer in the tooth there, fighting this fight. But again, a lot of props up on the fight. 8-round fight. We got the knockouts, the 5 ways, and so a lot of stuff to look at from wagering on this fight.
So we've touched a little bit on baseball, the World Series, of course, this fight. Now we're going to jump into college football. We saw last week, it was kind of not as good of a slate as it was the week before. We've got a couple of good games this week that we're going to touch on. Let's start with Kentucky and Tennessee. Tennessee comes into this game 12.5-point favorite. 67% of the tickets are on Tennessee. We've seen how well they've played of late. Hooker's in that Heisman discussion. 70% of the tickets are also on the over in this game, 62.5. So the bettors are really backing Tennessee here against Kentucky, both on the side and the total.
Yeah, and Kentucky's coming off their bye week, and Tennessee is essentially coming off their bye week with getting to play Tennessee Martin in a matchup where almost all of their guys sat in the second half. Hooker's been absolutely fantastic in these 18 touchdowns to 1 interception on the season. He's second in our Heisman Trophy odds right now, only to C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. The receiver, Jalen Hyatt's been absolutely fantastic. Had his coming out party against Alabama with the 5 touchdowns. So they've been able to put up points. This has been historically like a really good game. I think Tennessee won 45-42 last year in Kentucky. So Will Levis is still at the top of the charts on quarterbacks to be drafted next year. So this is a huge matchup. And the only thing from the standpoint of why maybe a pause on playing Tennessee in this game is next week. Right. Tennessee is going to travel to Georgia and have to play Georgia between the hedges. And
that lines up.
We already have that game up. We put it up earlier this week. Georgia is a 12.5-point favorite over Tennessee. So Tennessee needs to take care of business to make that game essentially the game that we're thinking it's going to be next week. But you always see these crazy look-ahead spots in college football where a team knows what they have on deck and is just unable to focus on the team they have in front of them. Doubt that's the case. Again, the regional challenge and rivalry that is Kentucky, Tennessee, but this should be a good game.
Yeah, I think if Tennessee gets by here and they look impressive, I mean, it's such a contrast in styles the following week. They've got Tennessee and Hooker in that dynamic offense against Georgia, who really prides themselves on not giving up a lot on the defensive side. So that number is up right now. Check it out. A little under a 2-touchdown favorite is Georgia in this game against Tennessee. A couple of other games that we looked at for this week, Ohio State and Penn State. Ohio State on the road, a 16-point favorite. Almost 70% of the tickets are on Ohio State, and about 66% of the tickets are on the over 61.5 here.
Yeah, and Ohio State dismantled an offensively challenged Iowa team last week. The only thing that you could take away from that Ohio State matchup was I think their first 5 times into the red zone, they settled for 4 field goals.
Right.
So they were a little bit frustrated on the offensive end that they were able to punch it in the end zone. Like I said, C.J. Stroud has been our Heisman favorite the entire year. Has been absolutely incredible on the offensive side of things. Penn State really redeemed themselves last week with a big home win over Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota doesn't have anything like the offense that Penn State is going to see coming in this week with Ohio State spreading them around.
Well, think about 2 weeks ago when they played at Michigan. It was a close game for maybe a quarter and a half. Then Michigan really changed it when they were able to run at will against that Penn State defense.
Michigan was a 41-17 victory at Penn State. So Penn State's really going to have to find it on the defensive side of things here. Maybe they get that momentum. I don't know if it's a whiteout this week in Penn State.
I'm sure it will be.
Anytime you go into Penn State, you always see the crazy whiteouts, a great atmosphere. But this is going to be an upward challenge for Penn State to try and match points with this Ohio State club. And C.J. Stroud, who we said is the Heisman Trophy favorite, if he can go have another solid game here, and we expect that Hooker is going to be able to put up some pretty good stats against Kentucky with what Hooker has on deck against Georgia and that Georgia defense, C.J. Stroud could almost win the Heisman Trophy over these next 2 weeks.
Notre Dame and Syracuse. Talking about Syracuse, they lose last week to Clemson. They were in that game for almost the entire game. The bettors love Syracuse in this game. 83% of the tickets are on Syracuse here against the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, and they forced They forced Clemson to take DJ Ukulele off the field and go to the backup there, and they were in the game.
Can you say that again?
Ukulele. The Notre Dame team has been on my ugly list twice.
Right.
And they were able to bounce back with a win over a depleted UNLV team last week.
Didn't cover, though.
Yeah, still allowed 24 points to the Rebels. A lot of that was in the second half, but still don't feel like things are right there at the University of Notre Dame and that they're clicking on all cylinders and traveling to New York. And this is still a Syracuse team that's been fighting and clawing. So interesting game. Again, a short favorite, essentially a pick'em type game. Should be a fun to watch.
Ole Miss and A&M. Ole Miss comes off their loss last week. They're a very small favorite at 2.5. 68% of the tickets are on Ole Miss in this game.
Yeah, Ole Miss gets beat up. This matchup though is more on what Texas A&M does not have, and they don't have a lot of healthy players. They're really, really banged up. They just also suspended 3 freshmen on the team for disciplinary reasons. So things are not all right in Texas A&M. They have a lot of internal issues going on.
In Aggie land?
So I think that's why you're seeing the ticket count on Ole Miss.
So now here's a game too. You talked about Tennessee a little bit, and maybe a look ahead. And Georgia's playing Florida this week. They're over a 3-touchdown favorite. Bettors outside of Syracuse who had 83% of the tickets. This is the second highest ticket count. It's on Georgia. 77% of the tickets are on the Bulldogs against Florida this Saturday.
Well, Georgia put a beating on Florida last year, 34-7. Richardson, the quarterback for Florida, had a stretch of 2 minutes of play where he turned the ball over 3 times, and Georgia was able to score on all 3 of those times. Georgia went into the halftime of that game with a 24-0 lead. Obviously, they ended up winning up 34-7. Stetson Bennett, quarterback from Georgia, didn't have a very good game the last time they played Florida. I think he was 10 for 19 for 161 yards, and he actually threw 2 interceptions. So Stetson Bennett playing an absolutely terrible game, and Georgia still being able to go and beat the heck out of the Gators last year, 34-7. Florida has not been, they haven't been able to rebound under Napier in his first year. And this is a Georgia team that, again, is looking at those national championship implications. And we talked about it when we talked about Tennessee in the look ahead. And, again, don't know that you can look ahead of Florida and the cocktail party that it's going to be down there in Georgia, but there is that game on deck that is Georgia getting the win here and not putting a lot on tape. They go beat Florida to be able to have the big matchup next week against Tennessee. So, again, you have a potential look-ahead matchup where Georgia's looking past this Florida team.
There's some other good games, too. The TCU West Virginia game. I know we kind of talked about Southern Cal a little bit. So this is a pretty good slate overall.
One of the best games of the week for me, again, I constantly feel like I'm always going back to the Big 12. I don't know why I gravitate to the Big 12, just because I think it's exciting football, a lot of overs, a lot of games there. But Oklahoma State, K-State, to me, is an outstanding game, and it's tough to talk about because Adrian Martinez, quarterback for Kansas State, left the game injured last week. Actually, their backup
that came in.
We
left it off the list.
Actually came in, and he got injured. But they have been really fantastic. This game could kind of determine who's going to end up winning the Big 12 or getting to play Texas in a Big 12 championship. So big game on the board, but you got to check the status of Adrian Martinez for Kansas State if you're going to play this football game.
So this is a really good college slate again, you guys. So check it out both on the app, over the counter. And we know that the bonus right now is running out, right? It expires at the end of the month.
Time is ticking.
Time's ticking, and there's so much going on right now.
Well, when the pumpkin strikes 12,
wow, I like
on
that.
October 31st.
That's Monday night. That is Monday night.
You're going to lose your $500, up to $500 bonus. So make sure you get in the month of October here. And
football, college football. We talked about the fight, World Series, hockey, basketball. There's a lot right now. Love it when you guys come in. We know we're getting closer and closer to holiday time. So get signed up for STN Sports. You still have up to that $500 bonus going on.
Take advantage of the sports side of the sign up too. Get in October because right around the corner next week is also Breeders' Cup.
Right.
So if you don't have the race side of the app and you're going to want to be playing the races, come in and get signed up for the race side of the app at the same time you're getting signed up for the brand new sports side.
Before we get into the pros, though, I just want to touch on college and last man standing, our signature college football contest. Before the season started, we had 2908 in the contest. Going into last week, we had 40. That number's been trimmed by 10. There's 30 of you guys that are left in the college football last man standing. Congratulations. You've done a great job. We usually see it go till about Thanksgiving time, but 30 lucky contestants are left on the college side of LMS.
Yeah, and what a week for them. I mean, to only drop kind of that
Right.
10, only 75% of the people falling out there is absolutely incredible to not have that cut. So we've got some sharp handicappers left in the college last man standing, and continued good luck to you guys as we head in here to the last weekend in October.
So, again, a lot of good stuff going on Saturday for college. Check it out. Get the app. We'll be right back with the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, and we're going to dive into pro football. And, man, was it a scary Week 7 last week.
It's football season, baby. And you know what that means. It's time to bet your buns off. And when it comes to sports betting, you better bet with the STN Sports App. So what in the heck are you waiting for? Download the STN Sports App today and trust the local favorite.
Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends. And before we kind of dive into the games, Jay, and kind of go through what we think are some of the best games of the week, here's some interesting stats this year that really favor the underdogs. Underdogs are 62, 45, and 1 against the spread this season, covering at almost a 58% clip. If you bet underdogs across the board, you've got about a 10.5% return on your investment, which really hadn't been the case. We know that there's a lot of parity in pro football, but this year I think you throw everything out and you look at some of the teams that we expected to be good that aren't, some of the teams that we expected to be bad that are good. And the entire season through 7 weeks has really been a little bit upside down.
Well, almost single-handedly, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been feeding the underdog bettors cash on a given week with the
as well the Green Bay Packers
the
have.
Packers and obviously most recently this Monday night where we saw the Patriots over a touchdown favorite against the Bears, and the Bears able to pull those upsets. So it's not only the underdogs winning against the spread and with the points, they're pulling off some really, really big money line upsets.
Right.
And I know the survivor pools, everybody just knocked out incredibly quick this year, and it's been really, really tough. Obviously, only the Eagles fans have been standing strong. But, yeah, the underdogs have been absolutely incredible this year. And normally that spells really, really good news for the sports books, that we've had some really, really good weeks. Although this past Sunday, despite the fact that we got some of those dogs and Carolina able to pull the upset against the Buccaneers, the vast majority of the games went the way of the betting public. They did well on a lot of games, and most notably so was our Raiders. Obviously, sitting here in the Las Vegas Raiders market, a lot of money on the Raiders and a lot of money cash on the Raiders with their big win over the Texans last week.
I think it was the first time this year that you guys have really done well on the Raiders. Side, total, game going over, and money line, of course. Cowboys-Lions game wasn't good. Bengals-Falcons game. There was a number of games that I think we looked at the slate. We'd only really won 2 games, and it was those 2 big upsets with Carolina upsetting Tampa, and then, of course, Green Bay losing to the Washington Commanders as well. So we're going to kind of dive into some of the games right now. The Thursday night game is Ravens-Bucks. But before we get into that, some interesting stats on Tom Brady. The first time in Brady's career that he's lost back-to-back games outright as a 7+ favorite, and the Bucks are the first team to lose outright as double-digit favorites in back-to-back weeks since 2009. They're not double-digit favorites here. They actually opened up the favorite against the Ravens. They were bet the other way, where the Ravens are now a very small favorite here. So you look at this matchup, 74% of the tickets are on the Ravens. Public is backing them. This game screams, though, Jay, big-time under. Total is under 6 of the last 7 times when these two teams play. Bucks have been under 6 of the last 7 times they've played, and Ravens have been under 4 of the last 5 times they've played. So these two offenses, which everybody thought would be high-scoring, high-powered offenses with Lamar Jackson and Tom Brady, hasn't been the case. Since Week 5, both Brady and Jackson are outside the top 10 in all quarterback categories.
Yeah, and we sat here last week kind of downplaying Tom Brady and telling you to stay away from Tom Brady, stay away from the Bucks. We don't trust them. They don't look good. And then they went out and really laid an egg against the Panthers, and I don't know how they can come back super quick and think that things are going to turn around. We see Mike Evans has a sprained ankle or a little bit of an ankle injury going into this game. The Bucks are dead last in yards per rush at, I think, like 3 yards a rush is what they're averaging per rush. And you see a Raven team that when Lamar is running the ball can have success. But these guys just, it's not clicking right now. When Lamar Jackson has 0 completions to Mark Andrews last week. Now, again, Cleveland did some things to bracket him and stuff like that, but these offenses just aren't figuring it out.
But in the Ravens' case, though, you look at, I think they ended up winning last week, but another case where fourth straight week that they've had a double-digit lead and almost saw that lead go away at the end of the game.
You just don't have an identity on offense.
They can't put teams away.
Lamar Jackson is your identity, and you see Drake have a good week one week. We saw J.K. Dobbins have good weeks. Last week it's Gus Edwards that has the good week, and so there's no consistency or go-to player, especially on the wide receiver side of things, whether it's Duvernay or Bateman or Andrews. The Bucs are really beat up. They have a lot of guys that are going to be missing this game. Several of their starters on the defense are going to miss the game. A couple offensive guys, some backup reserves that are going to miss the game. So you talked about the unders. I know Tampa 1-6 this year on games going under the total. Baltimore 2-5. So you'll find those teams at the very bottom of teams that consistently are playing low-scoring games or staying under their totals. And we've seen these Thursday nights outside of last week's interception fest between the Saints and the Cardinals. We've seen the Thursday nights tend to trend under, and this game is kind of screaming out with the struggles of these two offenses to potentially be an under matchup.
It is Tom Brady. It is on Thursday Night Football, so we'll see ultimately what happens. Broncos and Jags right now, it looks like Russell Wilson is going to play.
Sleep in.
Wow. Early game in London. Looks like Russell Wilson is going to play in this game. Interesting stat here. Jags is under 8 of their last 9 games. We know that Denver doesn't score a lot either. Probably the most disappointing offense in football right now at 2-5. But the bettors are really backing Jacksonville. 72% of the tickets you guys have bet so far are on the Jags in this game against the Broncos.
Sleep in. I really don't know what else to say on this game. If you're interested in playing it, big news out of Jacksonville is they trade James Robinson this week to the Jets. They're not a dynamic offense. We kind of saw the Giants.
Neither team's a dynamic offense.
Be able to stop them. The Giants are able to run the football on them. Denver, we've talked about it at length of the struggles of that offense. Russell Wilson is going to start this game. Heard all on the flight over there how everybody was trying to sleep and he was doing high knees on the plane and stretching. So maybe Russell Wilson's excited about going to London, and I think you should be excited about playing this Jacksonville defense because they're not one of the stronger defenses in the league. They can be passed on, but until Denver proves otherwise, I don't know how you can trust their offense. So I think this is a game kind of to stay away from. If not, play it under. But I know that those games going over to London, I want to put on a show. So I guess if you're starved for some early morning Sunday football, get up and enjoy the Broncos and Jags.
I know you mentioned the Robinson trade, that he was traded to the Jets. Before we came on today, Robert Quinn was traded from the Bears to the Eagles. And what I'm getting at is that the Broncos have been a team right now that if it's KJ Hamler, Jerry Jeudy, Bradley Chubb, they've been rumored to maybe be sellers right now. And if they lose this game, it could be a much longer flight home for some of these Broncos with all these trade rumors kind of circulating.
Well, the question for me is, what do the Broncos do if Russell Wilson is again bad here?
Right.
I mean, not that
what can you do?
Yeah, not that Rippon was able to go do anything, but I mean, at some point in time, they've got to make a decision on where thhere they're going and what's going to happen.
He just signed a brand new contract.
If he's bad, then you can go trade all these guys this week because you're going to be down in the division, especially where the Chiefs are.
I think it's a much bigger game for Denver because of that they really need to come out and kind of have a good showing, because a bad showing here, you go 2-6, Kansas City's on bye. I mean, you really trail in that division right now. We know the Chargers are a little bit banged up. The Raiders have a very favorable schedule coming up. I think it's a Bronco team that you'll look at the bottom of the AFC West and definitely might be sellers more than buyers at the deadline.
Yeah, we did put a lot of the props back up. So you'll notice on the app, a lot of teams to make the playoffs is back up this week. We put the divisions back up this week. Haven't been doing that every week, kind of a strategic week-by-week evaluation. There's a lot of teams that I think it's an interesting question on will they or won't they make the playoffs with where they're sitting today, and that some of the division races are real interesting as well. So if that's something that's intriguing to you on your team to make or not make the playoffs or to potentially win the division, all those prices are back on the app as we speak.
I think what's really interesting is before the season started, we talked about how the AFC West was arguably the best division in football, and would there be 2 or 3 teams that made the postseason out of the West? It's looking more and more right now that it's only going to be one team, and that's the Chiefs.
Well, I mean, again, I'm on record that I think the Raiders have a chance to make a nice run here.
Very favorable
San
schedule.
Diego, the injury to Allen, and I think the broken ribs by Herbert is affecting him a little bit more than I got the Anchorman stuck in my head.
We have been talking about that a lot.
The Chargers, they've just been banged up, but something's not right there either. With Seattle able to go in there and really beat that team up, all was not right. But the Chiefs still the class of division, and they showed that last week with the domination of the Niners. But we'll see if the Raiders can. We'll jump right into the Raiders because I think that that is a team that can make a run here, and obviously going up against the Saints, a short favorite, traveling to New Orleans, a team that's got the extra rest. Andy Dalton is going to be the starter there. Did not look good against the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, Dalton had a big game throwing the football after they got down big, only because of the interception returns that he kind of let the Cardinals get up big. But really, one of the most disappointing teams in the league for me has been this Saints team. A defense that was expected to be really, really good, an offense that was getting Michael Thomas back, Chris Olave, Kamara, that you expected to do things, and then Winston goes down, Dalton's in, Michael Thomas has played 1.5 games on the season. So I think this is a spot, again, that the Raiders can go steal a game on the road, and potentially getting Darren Waller back and the physicality with Josh Jacobs, it's really changing things around. If they try and guard Devontae Adams, they're running the ball with Jacobs, and if you stack the line to try and stop Jacobs, he's able to go to Renfro and Adams and Hollins, who's made some big catches for them. So they're able to add Waller back this week. That really gives the Saints some troubles with the amount of bodies they have to cover.
I think it's strange that we've actually seen this number come down. It was as high as 2.5. We've seen it come down to 2, even some 1.5s out there industry-wide right now. And it's not only Michael Thomas, it's Landry. Kamara has 0 touchdowns this year. He was a guy that, for fantasy football lovers, he had kind of crept back into the late in the first round, early in the second round. But it's a Raider team that I think if you're going to go on that run, this is a game that you have to win, being a small road favorite against kind of a beat-up Saint team. 73% of the tickets so far are on the Raiders, so you guys are backing the Raiders. Interesting kind of trend, though. The Saints, last 10 times they've played the Raiders, they are 7-3 against the number against the Raiders.
Yeah, and it's not like the Raiders were really dominant against the Texans. They
ran through them a lot.
But that game was 20-17, kind of middle of the third quarter, and then the Raiders were able to kind of run it up from there. And again, the Texans are kind of in the basement of the NFL right now. But Dameon Pierce was able to run the ball on them. They were able to strategically hit some passes. So Alvin Kamara should be able to find some success. It's really going to come down to the Saints whether they can stop this Raider offense.
So we've kind of touched on that. Now we're going to look at Bears and Cowboys. The Bears came out, big win against the Patriots. I thought it was Justin Fields' best game of the year so far. I love the way in the first half especially. They had kind of scripted some plays for him to kind of roll out. Love both running backs, and Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery. Defense caused a number of turnovers against the Patriots. Now they go up against one of the most physical and best defenses in football in the Cowboys. Prescott was back last week against Detroit. He didn't look great, though. That offense really struggled. It was more a product of Detroit giving that game away than Dallas actually winning that game. You're getting almost two-way kind of ticket so far on this game, but the last 5 times the Bears and Cowboys have played, all 5 games have gone over. The Bears have had several over games in their last 5 games as well. So we'll see what happens here, but another back-to-back road games for this young Bear team and Justin Fields.
Yeah, and a short week, and obviously going on the road. And it was exciting to watch the Bears and Justin Fields play a different brand of offense and giving him the ability to run the football. It was reported that the Bears actually had a lot of those plays were designed runs for Justin Fields to actually run the football.
He had a huge game rushing.
Gave them a different dynamic, and obviously then the defense went and really attacked Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi and were able to turn over the big turnovers, and the Bears were able to run the football successfully.
Justin Fields, like you touched on the design running plays, he actually rushed for more yards against the Bill Belichick team than any team had ever done before, which you have to wonder. We know his struggles with throwing the ball and kind of his pocket presence. Why defensively there wasn't a different scheme to make him try to beat you with his arm and not his legs?
Yeah, now they're going to go up against this Dallas defense that's been really, really good. And we talked about the struggles of kind of the Dallas offense against Detroit last week. And again, I kind of go back to the way we talked about Jimmy Garoppolo after taking over for Trey
Right.
Lance. It took him a couple weeks to kind of get going in that Niners offense to start clicking. And Dak Prescott, after the 5-week layoff, what was he going to be back, and how healthy is the thumb, and how is he throwing? So I'm anticipating as the weeks go on for the Cowboys that Dak's going to get better. He's going to get more in sync with those receivers, and somewhat scared for the Bears going in there that he's able to find it quickly because they do have the weapons. It could be no Zeke Elliott for the Cowboys this week. It could be, which could be even worse for the Bears because Pollard, we all see it with the eye test, is kind of the more dynamic back, a little bit more explosive out of the backfield, a little bit more catching balls out of the backfield from Dak. So look for that potentially in that offense. And with no Zeke, maybe they're not as concentrated on the running game, and it's more of a short passing game to Lamb. And the one thing that you really notice about the Cowboys is the involvement of Dalton Schultz, their tight end, when Dak is in. When Dak is in, Dalton Schultz is really one of his go-to guys, especially on that first or second down when they want to pick up 5 to 8 yards. Dalton Schultz getting a lot of receptions.
And it is, as we touched on, back-to-back road games for the Bears. NFC South game, Panthers-Falcons. We've seen this number drop a full point. A couple of interesting trends here. The last 18 times these two teams have played against each other, 13 of the games have gone under. The Falcons, outside of their loss last week against the Bengals, 6-1 against the spread their last 7, and they're 7-2 against the spread their last 9 against Carolina. But we've seen this number come down somewhat.
Yeah, and again, Carolina was just continuing downward trends, and you release Robbie Anderson, or you cut Robbie Anderson and then end up trading him to the Cardinals. We all know the Christian McCaffrey moving on to the 49ers, and then they come out and pull a miracle and get a victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a 13.5 point underdog. And so it's good to see the team fighting there. There's not a lot of tools in the shed, but again, when you're getting a team that is showing the effort, you got to like that. Yeah. Now, again, that was a home game against the Bucs. Now we're going on here on the road to Atlanta, a team that's coming off of kind of an embarrassing loss to the Bengals. One of the things,
and who has kind of owned Carolina of late.
Yeah, one of the things that in the loss to the Bengals that they were not able to kind of uncover was the chase and Boyd and the deep threats and the quick passing game that Burrow and the Bengals bring. Carolina is not bringing that offense to Atlanta this week.
DJ Moore.
Carolina a little bit more ground and pound, short passing game, which kind of suits that Atlanta defense a little bit better. I know the early money has been on Carolina here, but I expect the public to be all over the Falcons, potentially pushing this game back up from its current just over a field goal favorite.
Okay, now we're going to jump into the Battle of Pennsylvania. Steelers-Eagles. Eagles come in as the only undefeated team in football. Only 52% of the tickets are on the Eagles coming off their bye. The Eagles are over 7 of their last 8 home games. We've seen them get out to really hot starts in a bunch of their games early and just kind of coast. Steelers covered for us on Sunday Night Football. Didn't look great. Kenny Pickett has still turned the ball over a lot. They might be a team that's active sellers with Chase Claypool around the deadline as well. But the Eagles right now, double-digit favorites. But we have seen this number tick down just a little bit from the time we opened it up on Monday.
Yeah, and I've really been down on the Steelers. I've talked about it several times. I think it's because I own Najee Harris in one of my fantasy leagues, and I'm just sick and tired of watching him not put up the stats. So that has me influenced. But they pull the upset against the Bucs. Then they don't go down and get the cover. So they've been a very good team for the books and winning the books some money and a lot of people losing on them. They're all getting over double digits here at the Eagles. Eagles coming off their bye week, so maybe the Steelers can catch a team that was red hot, 6-0, off their bye week, not able to come. I kind of think that it's the opposite here. Unfortunately, in watching the Dolphins play the Steelers last week, I thought the Dolphins really did themselves a disservice giving Tua the ability to go throw the football. When they ran the football on first and second down with Mostert, he was just running through that Steeler defense, and then they would go and try and throw the football or some crazy unique plays and then end up punting. I don't think the Eagles will make that same mistake this week. They want to run the football, and they're not going to get away from the run until they need to, and I think that's kind of a disaster for the Steelers because I think that the Eagles can just kind of run through this team. And you've been talking about how the Eagles go and bury teams in the first half. They run up the score in the first half, and then they just coast in the second half. And if there's any team that has that makeup to get on top of the Steelers in the first half, play solid defense, and then just own the football and run the game out against the Steelers. That seems like the perfect kind of makeup that the Eagles have to go win this game.
Now we're going to jump over to the AFC East matchup between the Jets and Patriots. One of these two teams is the only team below 500 in the AFC East, and it's not the Jets. Jets are 5-2. Big surprise. They did lose Breece Hall, but you go and they make that trade, right away to go out and get James Robinson. Jets are 5-1 against the number of their last 6 games. Total has gone under 5 of the last 6 times that these two teams have played. So not a lot of scoring, but the Jets, I think, are a much more dynamic team now. I love the fact that they go out, even though it's just a rental, to replace Breece Hall. I think you send them the right message to your young team, that we know that we're good. You look at their skill position players of Corey Davis, of Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. You've got young wideouts to go with Zach Wilson, and now you needed a complementary piece for Michael Carter when Hall went down. I think this Jets team is really good, and this is kind of an intriguing matchup in the AFC East.
Yeah, and I don't know how much I'm still sold on the offense. Breece Hall really had been absolutely fantastic, and I don't believe that we're going to see James Robinson just take over that backfield. I still think it's, at least for this week, potentially next week, I still think we're going to see Michael Carter take that lead back role, and James Robinson will be sprinkled in. So don't expect him to just jump in and take over Breece Hall's role. But really the Jets have been doing it on the defensive side of things, which is where they're going to win this game. Right. If they win this game again this week, again with the Patriots coming off the Monday night loss, short week.
Bettors love the Jets, though. 67% of the tickets are on the Jets.
What's not to love about the Jets
points,
when you watch the Patriots look the way they looked on Monday night at home? Now, again, game was in a fog, rain, storm. Bears defense kind of played over their heads, but you don't know what's going on in that New England quarterback room and what Belichick's thinking with
Mac Jones. He's getting the start.
He's getting a start, but how long will he play? Right. And the ankle still doesn't look like he has a whole lot of mobility.
Don't you think you can make a case that actually, based on just the eye test and what we've seen so far, that the Jets should be the favorite in this game? They're 5-2. They've played great defensively. They're able to weather the storm early in the season without Zach Wilson. Why should the Patriots be the favorite in this game?
Some of it is go look at the teams the Jets have beaten, and they're coming off a win at Denver, again, against I don't know who's the quarterback. I don't want to call anybody the backup or the starter there, because I'm not really sure Denver has much of an offense to threaten teams. And again, from where they were at the beginning of the season, how much do you continue to adjust those power ratings on the Jets? And when do the wheels fall off?
Right.
We've been talking about New York, the Giants and the Jets.
I don't know if they do.
Overperforming, and at some point in time, when are these teams going to come back to earth? And this is essentially a pick'em game, and it becomes a monster game for both teams, even more so for the Patriots after their devastating loss on Monday night.
All right, Cardinals, Vikes. Cardinals, last time we saw them play, they had that big win on Thursday Night Football. They get a little bit more time to prepare for this one. Vikings come off a bye. Total has gone under the last 5 of the last 6 times that Arizona has played on the road. And you're kind of seeing a good two-way split here. About 51% of the tickets on the Vikings here. Vikings kind of have a comfortable lead, though, now in the NFC North, knowing that Green Bay's lost 3 in a row. Green Bay's a huge double-digit dog on Sunday Night Football to Buffalo. So a win here, and the fact that they've beat Green Bay head-to-head, they really kind of widen that gap a little bit in the NFC North.
Yeah, and the Vikings were a team that we were all over, at the beginning of the season. I think both of us are on record with saying, that the Packers were not going to win this division. It was going to be the Vikings.
They might not make the playoffs.
And Kevin O'Connell has been an absolutely fantastic find for them, bringing that offense. And I don't think, I think this bye week came at a great time for the Vikings, trying to figure things out, get that offense where they wanted to go, whether it's Justin Jefferson and Thielen and Cook and these guys. So this is potentially a great week. They're just over a 3.5, 4-point favorite against the Cardinals. Again, Cardinals getting kind of some of their guys back on a long week after playing after Thursday night.
Hop had a big Thursday night game.
And I think Connor might be a question mark, might be able to play in this game.
Looks like he might play, right, yeah.
Eno Benjamin's been pretty solid, but they're going to have to do things on the defensive side of things if they're going to stay in this game, because I think Minnesota is going to come out really looking to throw the football all over the Cardinals in this matchup. Might be something to look at from an over standpoint, because I really think that they're going to play a fast-paced offense this week against this Cardinals defense.
Let's jump Dolphins-Lions right now. Dolphins had that win on Sunday Night Football. looking to getting a little bit healthy. Lions are 6-1 against the spread. Their last 7 games at home, and their last 6 games at home, 5 have gone over. You guys love the fish here. 78% of the tickets are on the Dolphins. We know that offense is so much more dynamic when Tua is in, with Waddle and Hill and Mostert. They got 3 of the fastest guys in the league. Number's 3.5. My guess is this number's going to go up. I think one of the bigger decisions for us is that we're going to be Lion fans come Sunday.
Yeah, and as much as we talked about the Lions kind of getting beat up by Dallas, they're on a 3rd and goal from the goal line. Actually, I think it was 1st and goal from the goal line. Tight end makes a reception.
Thought they got in the play
Tight end
before,
makes a reception to take the lead. Then Jamal Williams, his first career fumble. But Detroit was going to be in the lead in the second half of that game, and then the Cowboys went on a long drive from there, and then kind of the wheels fell off. St. Brown went out of the game with a concussion issue. Josh Reynolds didn't look good.
It looks like he will be back this week, though, St. Brown.
They really didn't have their offensive weapons to kind of go at and attack the Cowboys from that standpoint. So Miami hasn't gone and had those big games. Detroit's defense can allow you to do that. If Miami sticks with the Dolphins and Hill and Waddle can go kind of get open, because those secondary, they do make a lot of mistakes in that Detroit secondary, but man, Detroit plays hard. And they look like they're really on the cusp of staying in these games, and then just seeing things go wrong for them. So I'm hoping
they find a way to lose,
I'm hoping for our sake they're back at home. And they find a way to play an inspired game at home and stay with this Dolphins team.
I think a lot depends, too, is that Jared Goff turned the ball over 4 times in that Cowboy game, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles. We heard Dan Campbell say, if you can't hold on to the football, you can't play for us. You have to wonder how short that leash is if he really struggles somewhat. You talked about Williams' first career lost fumble. But I think it's big if they can get DeAndre Swift back. He did practice today. It looks like he's going to play in this game, but I think that's a big part of their offense as well.
Yeah, he's a monster. I mean, you talk about fantasy football and busts.
Since week 1.
You knew he was injury prone, but a guy that went at the end of first rounds, early second rounds. Swift's a dynamic player, and he's able to get back in that offense that changes everything that the Lions want to try and do, in involving him both in the running game and catching the ball out of the backfield.
So this next game, I mean, if you would have asked me, before the season started, even a month ago, what do you think of this game? I would have been like, it has no interest at all. But it's actually one of the best games on the board, and that's the 6-1 New York Giants against the NFC West first place Seattle Seahawks. Giants are 6-1 against the number in their last 7. Seattle's 4-1 against the spread the last 5 times they've played the Giants. You guys love the Giants in this game. 63% of the tickets are on the Giants. I think the one problem for the Giants, though, is that they're banged up. We know their dynamic young tight end Bellinger is going to be out for a while. They've got some injuries on the offensive line, injuries at wide receiver, and they go into their bye next week. So this is a Seattle team that surprised everybody. Geno Smith has played great. It looked like DK Metcalf might be out for an extended period. No surgery. Now they're saying he went through the walkthrough today. So there's a chance that he could play on Sunday against the Giants. I think it's a bad spot for the Giants here, back-to-back road games. But they are getting the love from you guys again, where almost 63% of the tickets are on the G-Men.
Yeah, we look at the end of that game against Jacksonville, and if you go look at the guys that were actually on the field for the Giants, kind of in their last drives, they were using a lot of 6 linemen and 2 tight ends and just power football with Saquon Barkley right, Saquon Barkley left, and had some success doing it and were able to pull the late upset win over the Jaguars as a 3-point dog in Jacksonville. Now, again, traveling all the way to the Great Northwest on a Seattle team that's playing sky high after getting the win over the Chargers. They're going to have to do a lot of the same, control the football, and Barkley's going to have a monster game if they're going to stay in this game, just because of how beat up they are. In Seattle, they're gaining confidence in Geno Smith, and you talked about Marquise Goodwin and Lockett and the young running back in Walker. They're starting to find weapons, and if they can kind of patchwork that defense and be able to just not give up a ton of points, which we've seen them do kind of on the road and when the defense is falling apart. But if Seattle's able to get some turnovers and hold teams to some field goals, that offense is pretty dynamic. And obviously going and playing in that stadium with the 12th man, this is a tough challenge for the Giants, especially with the fact that they're trying to overcome these injuries and next week they have the bye
Right,
week.
right.
But Brian Dable's done an amazing job with this New York Giant team.
What I love about the Seahawks team is the way Geno Smith has played. But if you have a Godwin and you've got a Lockett and if Metcalf's back and as dynamic as Kenny Walker on that 70-yard touchdown run, it was the fastest run of any running back this season. So offense, he's got a lot of young skill position players around him. They're already talking about next year, building that offensive line around Geno Smith. I mean, when that trade happened with Russell Wilson, we thought for sure Seattle was going to be one of those teams that was in on Stroud or Hall, one of those guys at the top of the draft board. But instead, it's been the exact opposite, and that offense has been super dynamic so far. We're going to jump into one more Sunday game, afternoon game, before we look at the primetime games. Niners-Rams. Big NFC West matchup. I don't think any of us thought at this stage of the season we'd be talking about one team 3-3, one team 3-4. Niners have kind of owned the Rams. They're 5-0 against the spread the last 5 times they've played them, not including the playoffs, which they lost. San Francisco has won outright 7 of the last 8 times they've played the Rams. Rams have gone under, though, 7 of their last 8 games. You guys like the Niners here. 67% of the tickets are on the Niners. 82% of the tickets are on the over. And almost 65% of the tickets are on the Niners money line. So it looks like we're going to be Rams fans, even though they're at home and coming off their bye.
Yeah, and I think that goes back into what you talked about, how this Niner team, at least in the regular season, has owned the Rams.
Right.
Interesting situation here with the Rams coming off their bye week, getting to prep this week, and then or getting to prep for 2 weeks. But then in the middle of the 2-week bye, the Niners go and acquire Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
And so everything that they've prepped for essentially out the window and having to deal with what could be a dynamic new offense for the Niners.
The Niners have lost back-to-back games. They're 3-4 right now. A loss here puts them at 3-5. I think it's a much bigger game for the 49ers here than it is for the Rams. I mean, a Ram loss, it does put them below 500. I just think this Niner team, with the trade that they've made, the trade they made last year for the draft in Trey Lance, they have no picks for basically the next 2 years. So it's a 49er team that's built to win right now. I just think falling to 3-5 really makes it an uphill battle. But again, that division is kind of wide open at this point.
Yeah, we'll see what the Rams have figured out in their bye week. Up until now, it's been the Cooper Kupp show with Tyler Higbee sprinkled in. They really haven't been able to find their running game between Akers and Henderson. They acquired Allen Robinson over the end of the year, off season, and he's been somewhat of a red zone tool, but not really part of the offense. So we'll see if the Rams will be able to figure something out here. But I'm really interested to see what kind of offense the Niners are going to go to, and I'll jump into it when we go to hint when we go to my fantasy quarterback sleepers this week.
All right.
But I think this is a really interesting matchup, and I think it's a big game for both of these teams because we talk about Seattle leading the division and having a home game against the Giants. One of these teams is going to continue to fall 2 games behind Seattle if they're able to win that game over the Giants.
Right. Yeah, so it's a big NFC West matchup. All right, Sunday Night Football now, which when the schedule came out looked like a marquee matchup. The Green Bay Packers traveled to Orchard Park and the Buffalo Bills and Bills Mafia, and they're almost 2-touchdown underdogs. Who would have thought? They've now lost 3 straight games to the Giants, the Jets, and the Commanders. They're reeling, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think with the trade deadline coming up, they're going to go out and make a big-time move for a wideout. Buffalo is 5-0 against the spread the last 5 home games that they played the Packers. And Green Bay, though, 4 of their last 6 games on the road has gone over. There's a lot of points here. I can't remember personally the last time that Aaron Rodgers was this big of a dog, if he's ever been this big of a dog since he became the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
Well, the Bills at home have absolutely been destroying people. We know how dynamic that offense is. Green Bay has really shown nothing on the offensive side of things that show us that they're going to be able to stay in this game or play at the pace that the Bills play at from an offensive standpoint. The Packers were kind of going to be built this year on the A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones running back
and young receivers.
And A1. And, A.J. Dillon I don't even see as part of the offense at this point in time. So Aaron Rodgers is going to have to find something special in one of these young receivers to even just stay in this game and make
Watson's
it
been hurt.
Competitive
Dobbs
football game.
has had some big drops, and I think that's why that this Packer team who hadn't before gone out and made that big move at the trade deadline, I think you have to listen to Aaron Rodgers here. You need to go out and get somebody. No team misses their star wide receiver more than the Green Bay Packers do with Devontae Adams. And we know there's guys like Brandon Cooks, Chase Claypool, even the tight end from Miami, Mike Gesicki, that doesn't seem to fit into that Miami offense well. They might all be available, and some other wideouts as well. I really think Green Bay goes out and makes a big-time move for a wideout at the trade deadline.
They might, but that's not going to help them this week against Buffalo. And so you're going to be holding on to that double-digit point spread.
Could be their fourth straight loss.
Yep, and not only a fourth straight loss, but the fourth straight loss to all what we think are, again, the Giants and Jets have been playing.
Well, not the Commanders so much, but yeah.
But,
right.
subpar teams that they went and lost to, and not only lost.
Right.
I mean, they had an interception return for a touchdown, and without those points, I mean, the Commanders really
dominated them, right?
They beat them up. They beat them up pretty handily. And now you're talking about going to Buffalo and playing, arguably the best team in the National Football League.
All right, Monday Night Football. Big AFC North matchup. The Bengals, for me right now, are one of the hottest teams in football, just the way that you can see that offense. If it's Chase, if it's Boyd, if it's Higgins or Mixon with Joe Burrow, that offensive line seems to be kind of coming together. The star power after the Super Bowl hangover is just coming together at the right time. Bengals are a 3.5-point favorite. The biggest one-sided ticket count is on the Bengals this week. 83% of the tickets are on the Bengals in Cleveland on Monday Night Football. It is Halloween, so there's going to be some crazy stuff that goes on that night. Cincy 5-0 against the spread their last 5 games, and 8-9 against the number their last 9 games on the road. So a lot of trends that kind of favor Cincy. Ticket counts, and for me, one of the hottest teams in football right now.
Yeah, their big playability is, matched kind of up there with the Bills.
Oh, absolutely, right.
And the Chiefs. And no strange that those are the teams that we have, favored to win the Super Bowl. These teams that have the ability to quick scores, and Jamar Chase, and with T. Higgins when he's healthy, and now you sprinkle Boyd in the mix, who's made some big plays. That offense is dynamic. Sitting currently as a 3.5-point favorite on Monday night. Expect this game to go to 4.5, because I don't know who, what, when, or why anybody's going to want to play the Browns in this situation. I think that it's, hopefully we get a big bet, from a sharp account or somebody that wants the Browns. But I think the public's going to be all over the Bengals in this situation. You talked about the slow start, the Super Bowl hangover, started off 0-2, and now this team has found their ground, found their steam, and has just been playing some really good football.
We talked about a lot of guys that might be available at the trade deadline. Keep an eye on Kareem Hunt. I know that him and Chubb have been this two-headed monster, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Cleveland deal Kareem Hunt. We know that Buffalo was kind of in on Christian McCaffrey. Don't be surprised if they're in on Kareem Hunt as well. Before we get into our two kind of favorite segments of Stephen Money's Fantasy Football Fever and the good, the bad, and the ugly, let's touch on last man standing for pro football. Total entries before the season started was 6284. Going into last week was 104. This has dropped down all the way to 39 guests. We had 40 in college. It went down to 30. 104 in the pros, down to 39. So congratulations, you guys. You've done a great job. There's 39 guys left, or contestants left, I should say, in LMS.
So 30 in college, 39 in pro. Does one end? Do they end in the same week, or does one last longer than the other?
I'm thinking pro lasts a little bit longer.
Okay, Chucky's on the pro lasting longer than college.
But we shall see. So again, a really big slate of games in pro football. I think you make a case that Giant game is a big game, the Ram game, and the 2 primetime games should generate a lot of handle. Don't forget, again, that early game in London. I know Jay said don't get up, but you have the app. You can get up, you can sleep right until 6:28, and then you got the app for that 6:30 kickoff. We'll be right back with Stephen Money's Fantasy Football Fever and the good, the bad, and the ugly. I can hear John queuing up that music right now.
My name's Stephen Money, and here's why you should bet on me, the STN Sports App. Just park at any of our 14 convenient sign-up locations, walk in, and you'll be signed up in minutes. And don't worry, I got all your favorite sports covered. Download the STN Sports App today and trust the local favorite.
Hey guys, we're back to finish up the Sports Betting Podcast bookends with 2 of our favorite segments, Stephen Money's Fantasy Football Fever, and of course, the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's jump into the fantasy segment first. So you look at quarterbacks this week, and I know most people are going to think I'm crazy. I'm going with Tom Brady. I just think they're on prime time. He's had a couple of really bad. We're going to play this back next week, too. We had a couple of really bad performances. I think they bounce back. This Ravens defense has been nothing special, has been torched in the second half of games. I'm going to go with Tom Brady. Big bounce-back performance on prime time against the Baltimore Ravens.
And when you say big bounce-back performance, because literally him throwing for 170 yards and having a touchdown
175
would
and a
be
touchdown.
a big performance.
All right.
Are you expecting 270 and 2, 260 and 3?
I'm going to say 275, and if the prop was 2.5 touchdowns, I'm going over.
Okay. Just wanted to understand.
I'm glad. No.
Your craziness.
No worries.
In your Tom Brady prediction. I will go to not as crazy, but Jimmy Garoppolo. We have
That's for our friend Bert
Sorrentione, who likes to call him Jimmy
Garoppolo.
Jimmy G and the Niners. Last 4 games, the attempts, 27, 30, 41, and 37. So they've got away from the rushing offense. Also, we've seen an escalation of his yards passing, 239, 253, 296, and 303. Now, obviously, the 303 was because they were getting smacked by the Chiefs and playing catch-up football all day. But his last 3 games, he's thrown for 2 touchdowns in each of those games. Now, you had Christian McCaffrey, the offense, and I don't know that we're going to see Shanahan pound the rock with Christian McCaffrey. I think that Christian McCaffrey provides Jimmy Garoppolo another element of a guy catching the ball out of the backfield to go with Samuel, to go with Ayuk, to go with Kittle, and I think that you should have some confidence starting Jimmy G this week at the Rams.
So what do you think his over-under in touchdowns is?
4.
4?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's...
Oh, wow.
Based on the escalation, I think he throws for 312 and 4 TDs.
You guys heard that. 312 and 4 TDs. All right. Running back. I'm not going to do the hand gesture now. I can't do it. Running back. I'm going to go with maybe the biggest disappointment in fantasy football this year, Jonathan Taylor. They go
You're
with
just parlaying the Brady.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I am. Jonathan. They go with the quarterback
It's
change.
bounce back weekend for
It
Chuck
is.
Esposito.
I love it. Love my train of thought.
Jonathan Taylor.
You know, they make the quarterback change. No more Matt Ryan, Sam Edinger. I think against this defense, the Commanders are going to be able to run somewhat. We saw the Bears kind of run through them on that Thursday night, even though they couldn't convert that to touchdowns. I think the Colts do it. I think Jonathan Taylor has a big week, arguably his biggest week of the season. I think Jonathan Taylor scores at least 1 and goes over 100 yards rushing against the Commanders on Sunday.
I hope you're right. I have Jonathan Taylor in the league that I had the first pick. It's been a monster disappointment, so I look forward to the week because you can't do anything but play him. I'm going to go to Miles Sanders, the Philadelphia Eagles. Talked about the Eagles playing the Steelers this week, over a double-digit favorite. The Eagles love to get the lead, pound the rock. Sanders' best game, he had 27 carries for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville.
You know what scares me about the Eagles? And I think Miles Sanders has been great this year. Both him and Josh Jacobs were kind of don't draft us in fantasy football, and they both had great years. It's that Hurts kind of poaches a lot, and then you've got Kenneth Gainwell and you've got Boston Scott. They kind of have a 4-headed monster there. So I think it's hard for any one of their running backs to just kind of be that guy. But if you had to pick one, it would be Miles Sanders.
Well, I'm telling you this week that Miles Sanders is that guy. He's not going to get poached. Jalen Hurts is not going to take his touchdowns.
I've got Hurts on 3 of my fantasy teams. So
he's going to have a line much like this. He normally is in the 15 to 18 carry range, and because they're going to score early and often in the first half, there's going to be a lot of running the football in the second half. Look for Miles Sanders to have over 25 carries, over 130 yards, and dive into the end zone this week.
Those would be some juicy prices if you could
parlay that to Jimmy G, and then when you hear the receiver, you've got your 3-team parlay.
You know, I wish I was a good dancer because for my receiver, I'm going to go JJ, Justin Jefferson. I'd get up and do the gritty, but it would be a blooper reel, so I can't do it. I just think against Hop, coming out of their bye, Jefferson has been good this year, but he hasn't had those big, long touchdowns. I think Justin Jefferson has a huge game against that banged-up Cardinals secondary. I think he goes off for over 150 and 2 touchdowns against the Cardinals on Sunday.
Well, I don't have to do much of a dance because his is a little bit easier, so I
wonder who that is.
I can bust it out.
Who do we think?
But I'm going
Jalen
with
Waddle.
the Waddle. Anytime I can look at the schedule and say who's playing Seattle or Detroit, that's the receiver I'm looking for, and so I'm picking on the Lions.
John, make sure you save that clip, though, okay?
I'm looking Waddle against the Lions again. A team that gives up a lot of big plays. Obviously, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. The return of Tua is really what intrigues me here. In the first 2 games of the year when Tua was playing, Waddle had 3 touchdowns in those first 2 games. Hasn't scored since. I think he gets back in the end zone here. I think Waddle has a big day against the Lions.
And we saw some huge kind of total numbers when the Lions played at home earlier in the season, their first couple of games. So I could see some big numbers on the board here as well. So now our favorite, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I know John has queued up that music. You guys are anxious to hear it. We're going to dive right into it. So in football, the good for me, it's the G-Men at 6-1, the Jets at 5-2, the Seahawks at 4-3. All 3 teams no one really expected to be any good this year. All 3 were kind of projected to be last in their divisions. Combined, 15-6. Congratulations to you 3 teams. For me, you are the good as we head into Week 8.
I'm going to go to the ice for my good, and it's been a great start for Las Vegas Golden Knights. 6-2, 25 goals for, 16 against. Logan Thompson's been good in net, which was one of the big question marks that they had come this year. The tough loss to the Avalanche, who were coming back out of 2 losses. We see Phil Kessel set the milestone consecutive game plays.
And he scores.
Also gets a goal in the game. So
his 400.
Golden Knights, this is what we talked about, that they had to get a good, quick start, gain that confidence. I think the Knights are doing that, and I think this could propel them to a very solid season. Won't be good for us on the sports side of things, because when the Golden Knights win, it's not good for the books.
But it does. It brings more people into the book when they're playing well. A lot of their game, all their games are on TV, and I think it does draw an added interest to hockey, where we see a lot more kind of hockey parlays, a lot more props in the Knights game. And you're right, from the fans' perspective, we love it. From our side of the counter, it's okay if they win sometimes, but not on the puck line, which they did last night. But I think you look at the Pacific, and the Kings are real young and good. The Flames are a huge surprise right now with only 1 loss. After you lose Goudreau and Kachuk there, they've really played well with some of their young players, picking up Hubadro and Kadri. But I agree. I think the Knights are a team right now that can win the Pacific.
We said they had to get off to the hot start.
Right.
Well, they've done that. Let's see where they can roll from here.
All right, I'm going to stay in pro football for the bad. So my bad is the Rams, who are 3-3, defending champs. The Niners, 3-4. The Packers, 3-4. And the Bucks, 3-4. 12-15 for all teams that we expected to be either first place in their division, definitely contenders in their conference, and Super Bowl. All right now look really bad, and it wouldn't surprise me if 2 of those 4 teams doesn't even make the playoffs.
For my bad, I'm going to go to BYU, kind of stay somewhat close to home. BYU in Week 2 had a monster win over the Baylor Bears, a big win for them on their season, and since then it's really been a downturn. I think they failed to cover in 7 straight games, and then this week they go and lose 41-14 as a 7-point favorite at Liberty. Of all teams. And so we'll see if they can bounce back. They've got a home game against East Carolina this Friday night. But BYU, after a strong start to the season, has really kind of fallen off the table. So they're my bad this week.
Okay. Ugly. I'm going to switch gears, and I'm going to go to the NBA. There's only 3 teams that are winless right now, and one of them happens to be the LA Lakers. They don't make the playoffs. Last year, they thought they made some moves in the offseason this year to help them, but I don't know what's going on, really. It seems like every move that they make right now, not sure if it's driven from LBJ or what, but they are just a mess right now. 0-3, not sure what the Lakers can do, but for me, they are the ugly right now in the NBA.
The Orlando Magic are equally as ugly. I think if they're 0-4, Pablo Banchero.
But we're talking about the Lakers.
Guy top of the Rookie of the Year, had a great start to the season, but the Magic 0-4. But the Lakers a monster disappointment, especially when you talk about hand-picking a team of guys to go to battle with, and they've really struggled. And I don't really have it. Normally I'm really passionate about ugly, and a team that you gotta really be ugly to get on my ugly list. So I'm just gonna stay at the bad. I don't want to throw anybody on the ugly bus.
He's done it enough with the Fighting Irish in hockey and some other
maybe
stuff.
Vancouver, but they're still in the bad range. Okay. You really got to be ugly to jump on my ugly bus.
So it's hard to follow the Waddle and no ugly this week. But guys, first, happy Halloween. Be safe. Have fun. Looks like it's going to be a scary good weekend with a great slate of games. And again, The expiration for the $500 bonus for STN Sports for new signups is, as you said, midnight on Monday night. So get signed up before that. There's so much going on right now. We know the holidays are right around the corner. And don't forget, in late November, World Cup starts as well. So a great time to have STN Sports. So for Jason, Chucky, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook, and we will see you guys next week on the Sports Betting Podcast, Bookends.